Aloha Aina, and welcome to Voices of Truth, one-on-one with Hawaii's future, brought to you by the Kiwani Foundation. I'm Ehuke Kahu Cardwell.
And I'm Kaiopua Fife, welcoming you to conference room number 2 here at the UN headquarters in New York City. It's kind of good to get out of that crowd that we encountered outside, huh?
Yes, it was.
Glad to get here.
This is the room where, for 2 weeks each year, the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues takes place, and this is the 4th year of that. And in another Voices of Truth segment, we're actually going to be talking about what occurs during the forum. But today we wanted to talk about something different, something special, and something very significant and important for the people of Hawaii.
Yeah, I think we're going to go back a couple of months to a really important date, March 1. That's when the Committee on Indian Affairs, the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs on Capitol Hill, held their opening meeting and first had a hearing on the Akaka bill.
Okay, so this
Native Hawaiian Reorganization.
So this is down in Washington, D.C. we're
Correct.
talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So March 1, I was fortunate to be able to attend that committee hearing.
So you were actually in the room.
Yeah, so I was in Washington, D.C. I planned the trip actually a couple of weeks in advance. When we found out that the bill would be heard, we contacted the Indian Affairs Committee staff requesting to be put on the agenda as opposing testimony. I think most of our listeners should know by now that Kiwani Foundation, overwhelming majority of Hawaiians oppose this Akaka bill, continue to oppose it, and it seems to be getting worse at every moment. But at any rate, my request was to be put on and to be one of the people who could provide testimony. Unfortunately, I was told that that wouldn't be the case, that anybody was welcome to send in, mail in, electronically deliver any kind of testimony they would like, but that they already had a slate of speakers for that particular hearing. And it wouldn't be including any, well, they didn't say this. They said that it would possibly include one opposing testimony. And I asked who that might be. And they said, well, it's the chair of the Congress of American Indians. And I said, you're talking about the organization that represents, or one of the organizations that represents federally recognized Native American tribes? And I was told, yes. And I said, well, I find it hard to believe that there's going to be any kind of testimony in opposition being provided by that particular body. But at any rate, the committee staffers were, very welcoming, and we had great discussions, just as you have recently, with some of the staff of the Indian Affairs Committee. But they were not budging an inch on anybody providing opposing testimony to the bill during that, on record, in that hearing.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We're talking about a bill passing through U.S. Congress that, if passed, will become U.S. law, that has the potential to affect all the people of Hawaii. And you tell me they were only allowing one side of the story to be told in that room?
Yeah, but you know what? This is kind of a pattern. Because very frankly, several years ago, I think we should all remember that this Akaka bill, in one form or another, long before Senator Akaka attached his name to it, as a matter of fact, close to 15 years ago, was scribed by Senator Inouye, actually by Pat Zell.
In his office.
And the opposition at that time was so strong that it was kind of put on the side. And we know that, 5-6 years ago, it reemerged, and it was after the 1993 act that was, what's the name of
the
apology resolution. After the resolution came out, then this bill, now known as the Akaka bill, surfaced again. And now we realize that there was a connection between the apology bill and the Akaka bill in its various forms up until today. Yeah. So at any rate, there is a history of this same type of disallowance of opposing testimony. As you recall, was it Blaisdell Arena, Blaisdell Center? Was it a couple of 4 years ago? There were hearings
in Hawaii,
held in Hawaii, on the Akaka bill. when it was first coming back. And as many of you will remember, it was overwhelmingly opposed at that time. Even any people who allowed that there was any possibility of this Akaka bill, federal recognition, working, even those who hoped to be able to make something decent out of it, all had reservations. There was only one group that actually supported the bill without any reservation. But it's peculiar. But since that time, guess what's happened?
Yeah. So that's the history 5 years ago. Now going to 2005, like Kaiopua said, March 1st rolls around, and as many of our viewers know, before a bill can become law, it has to go through committee. Hearings have to occur in a committee, and then after the hearings occur, then the committee votes it out of committee, and at that point it can go to the Senate floor for a full vote. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. What we want to share with you today, or what Kaiopua wants to share with you today, is his experience of actually being in that room on Capitol Hill during the Indian Affairs Committee hearings for the Akaka bill, and like he said so far, no opposing testimony was allowed. Only those people who supported the bill were allowed to talk.
Well, let me finish my last thought, which I thought you would pick up on. But essentially, what do you think happened after the Blaisdell community hearings, the last public hearings?
Nothing.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. They left Hawaii and never came back.
That's right.
The opposition was so strong that there has been no hearing in the very state and the very community before the very people who are going to be impacted by this thing to allow any input at all. So, and to go further than that, even in Washington, D.C., March 1st of this year was not the first time that no opposition testimony was allowed.
Yes.
This has happened over the past couple of years.
Yes.
So, as I said, it's a pattern. I think they know there's such huge opposition, they don't even want to go there. So, when that's the case, I guess you just script out your hearing. And
you hold it 5,000 miles away.
Yeah. So the only people who could really appear, of course, were our OHA trustees. They have the money.
Yes.
They use our money.
The beneficiaries' money they use.
Yeah. So they're able to get back and forth between Washington, D.C. and Hawaii quite frequently, which is what they've been doing. We've talked to you on previous programs about, $11 million dedicated out of the OHA trust funds to support the passage of the bill. And,
earmarked.
It's just ridiculous. But at any rate, so on the day that I walked into the hearing room, I have to tell you that most of the people who were there, who of course were all supporters of the Akaka bill, we know, we've known them for years. I mean, in some arenas we work with them shoulder to shoulder. Our opposite, or the fact that we have problems with the bill doesn't mean that we can't be civil to each other.
That's right.
And for the most part, that was the case when I walked in. Dante Carpenter was there. We served together on the Native Hawaiian Constitutional Group. Aha Hawaii Oiwi. Hanania Poliona was there. And of course, she was quite preoccupied because she was giving quite a serious presentation, but she greeted me warmly. And
Judge Mossman was there.
Yeah, he didn't really even acknowledge my presence there. Ostender was there. Governor Linkle was there, and for the most part, everyone was relatively civil. This is the way we're all big people, and we're also all ohana. So we work this thing through like adults and like family members.
So who chaired the hearings that day?
Well, Senator McCain, of course, is the chair of the Committee on Indian Affairs, Senate Committee. And as we know, he has a lot of Indian tribes federally recognized in his home state of Arizona.
That's right.
And we've talked to him in the past. We were there last year and talked to the staff.
So they know what federal recognition does for tribes. They've seen it in their own home state, Arizona.
And you might say they also know what federal recognition does not do.
Yes.
So, that's a big area. But at any rate, I think most of our viewers who have been tuned in, at least to our presentations here on Voices of Truth, realize that Senator McCain is one of the senators who has huge problems, not only with federal recognition, but specifically with the Secaucus bill.
Yep.
So, but I think we also have to remember, looking even a little bit back, that the Secaucus bill has never gotten out of committee in the Senate. It has never gotten to the floor.
Not till this year.
Well, it got to the floor this year because there was a deal made last fall, which we've talked about previously, in which our Hawaii senators were able to tag on the Secaucus bill to a very important budget bill. And the deal that was made in order for them to remove that Secaucus bill from the budget bill, the deal made was that this session, the Secaucus bill would be allowed to see the light of day. It would be moved through committee and on to the floor of the Senate for vote.
Okay, so we've talked about who was there at the hearings that day on March 1st. Tell us a little bit about what happened. So that everybody gets in the room, and Senator McCain and his staff and the rest of the Indian Affairs Committee file in. They sit down on the chairs up on the dais. The hearings start.
Yeah, Senator Secaucus was there. Mm-hmm. Senator Inouye was not. I think he was ill on that day. But it was a full house. And of course, it was good. It was in chambers, closed-circuit television. I thought it was really neat to find out. David Ingham, one of our other Kiwani board members, let us know that you could tune into to the Senate website, and you can actually see the TV recordings from the internal TV communications, and I thought that was really interesting. It was pretty neat. That same type of coverage didn't take place on the second hearing, but at any rate, there was a room full, and additionally, two other supporting testifiers came into the room, and one of them was Ed Case, representative from Hawaii, and from Samoa.
Any Mavanga, who is the
Right.
representative down there, the non-voting member of Congress.
Yeah. So, we also had from the Department of Hawaiian Homelands representation there. Clyde Namu'o was there.
From OHA.
Yeah, from OHA. Actually, Trustee Akana was there. I mean, there was quite a gathering. I said they rack up quite a few frequent flyer miles going back and forth.
So tell us what happened.
Well, one of the things I noticed about Hanania Poliona, she was very focused. I mean, she was great. She received me graciously, greeted me graciously, but I could see she was really focusing on her message. And it was interesting that when she was called up to give her testimony, of course, as we traditionally do in Hawaii, she offered a chant, and everyone stood and acknowledged. Actually, I think Senator McCain made a comment that we need more of these types of greetings and to start off committee hearings. And then Trustee Apoliona then began to read her statement. Now, one of the things that the staff had told me early on when I was trying to get in and provide opposing testimony was that Senator McCain wanted that meeting over in record time. He did not want lengthy testimony being provided, that even those who were allowed to provide supportive testimony were doing it in long form, hard copy, and he did not want to spend a lot of time on this.
So in other words, when they got up to speak, speak to the point, be short, and sit down.
Yeah, and one of his comments, I think, kind of caught Hanania Poliona a little bit off guard, because he interrupted her to say that we have hard copies of the full testimony. Could you please make a brief, hit the high spots? And it kind of, I think she was so focused and so into providing that testimony, which I know she must have spent a lot of time, that it kind of threw her head. It was disturbing for me to see that personally. But as I say, McCain was very hospitable, but it was clear he wanted to move things along. So I think everyone else after that pretty much took his wishes to heart. And so things did move along quickly, and I think the entire committee hearing only lasted half an hour. I mean, that's from start to finish.
Wow.
So it moved along. My personal feeling was at that time, and it actually still is that I think Senator McCain still has no respect for this bill. And I think he still knows there's a lot that needs to be done with federal recognition. And I think the impression I got is that he was moving this thing forward and allowing it to go through the committee because of the deal that was made last year. And one thing you want to do on Capitol Hill, just as you should do elsewhere, is you make a promise, you've got to carry it out.
You better keep it, yes.
So I think that's what's going to be happening, is that this promise is going to be honored, and that there will be an opportunity for this bill to come forward.
So Kaipua, there was one person you mentioned a few minutes ago to our viewers that did get up and give testimony, and that was the Native American. Tell us what he said when he got up to testify, please.
Well, this fellow who is the current president of the Congress of American Indians, quite a large group, all comprised of federally recognized Native American tribes. I've referred to them earlier as being cited as one of the, let me give you some quotation marks, the only opposing testimony that was going to be allowed. And it was interesting because he did stand up, and of course he's very familiar with Capitol Hill, very familiar with the Indian affairs, very familiar with everyone, just as our trustees are from Oahu. Very close to them, a long established relationship. And from the very beginning, the first thing that he said was, well, the Congress of American Indians also supports this bill with the understanding that new language be crafted to ensure that no funding, that there be no possibility of any funding that could maybe go to Native Americans, that none of that could be misdirected or redirected to Native Hawaiians.
Wait a minute, let me get this straight. You mean to tell me that the Native American representative stood up and said, we support the Akaka bill as long as you don't take any of our money and transfer it over to the Native Hawaiians to fulfill the promises of this bill should it pass, and that was the only opposing testimony that was allowed?
Well, and it wasn't exactly that way. What he said was he wanted new language inserted in the bill to guarantee that, to the extent that it could.
Yeah.
And so this was the single little stick in the total support of this bill from everybody who was permitted to speak. And I thought, a fellow as knowledgeable as this Native American with the ways of the committee and so forth does not stand up and come off cold with a statement like that. So I could see that this had been something that had been agreed on earlier on,
yes,
in advance.
Yes.
And I guess this is what the Indian Affairs Committee staff was seeing as being slightly opposing.
That's
slightly.
That's
opposing.
their definition of opposition, folks. Yeah.
But it is interesting. Anyone who's had anything to do with Native Hawaiian, Native American program funding through Administration for Native Americans, through the Department of Education. It used to be a really strong sentiment from the Native American tribes that they didn't want anybody else playing in that pool of funds. That included not only Native Hawaiians but Native Alaskans and so forth. But over the years, it seems that things have worked out so that they've been able to withstand this. You may remember a couple of years ago, OHA actually, in order to encourage the continuation of federal funding for projects through Administration for Native Americans, OHA promised to cost share. So OHA would put up money, federal dollars would match,
yes,
and so forth.
Yes.
And it was almost like another leg of the ANA, Administration for Native Americans, programming funding. And it survived, I think, for 2 years, and that was it. I think Clayton He was a part of that original thing.
So the hearing occurred. That was the only opposition that was allowed. And what happened? The bill was then later on voted on in committee, wasn't it?
Well, let me catch up on a couple of other testimonies. Finney from
Samoa, American Samoa, and Falema-Rega. Yeah.
He's a very articulate.
Yes, he is.
Highly admired member of the Pacific family. We've seen him in Hawaii on many occasions, celebrating with us and so forth. And although he stood up and voiced support for the Akaka bill, in a way, his the actual message that he delivered that I got really went much broader than federal recognition. And I mean, it was not wishful thinking on my part. The man really is large thinking, and he was looking far beyond, I think, this federal recognition. That's my take on his testimony. And then, of course, we had Representative Ed Case, who was solid rock right down the line, party line, backing
for it. Yep.
Well, Ed Case wants to be a
party man.
Well, and a team player to the extent that it'll help him to increase his clout.
Sure.
And he's the newest congressional member from Hawaii there. So that's pretty much. And then, of course, we had Jade Danner from the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. And so she spoke very emotionally. She's capable of doing that when it's called for, in support. And then Governor Lingle. And Governor Lingle was asked by Senator McCain if she had any feel for how the Republican administration felt or feels about the Akaka bill. And she was very frankly said no, she had no idea. I mean, she had had supper with President Bush a couple of nights before, but she didn't think it was something that was appropriate for her to talk about. And that's protocol. But of course, Governor Lingle was very effusive in her support for the Akaka bill.
But Senator McCain actually asked some questions that were not that friendly towards the bill, didn't he?
Well, Senator McCain knows the ins and outs of it, and he asked some questions, but I have to tell you that Governor Lingle is fast on her feet, and she was able to counter back, and she was not reading from a script. I mean, she was well prepared. And she talked about tourism as being the number one industry, and that Native Hawaiians are the host culture, and we have to support them. And in this manner, federal recognition will help to perpetuate. Without federal recognition, as we've heard Trustee Mossman say, Native Hawaiians are finished.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us don't really believe that. I'm not one that believes that.
I think most of us don't believe that.
I don't think that anything is going to polish us off. As our listeners should realize, Native Hawaiians now comprise the largest percentage of the population in Hawaii. We're on the rise. We're on the rise. So.
Largest and growing larger every day. Now, about 25% of the population
Total
of Hawaii.
Population. Right.
So, folks, nothing to worry about there. It's getting better every day.
So, at any rate, after all the discussion, there actually, I think in order to craft language and so forth, the recommendation eventually came out. I think it was 1 week later that the bill would pass out of committee with a good recommendation. But of course it hadn't done so for months, and that was because the language that the Congress of American Indians wanted inserted to guarantee that they wouldn't lose a penny to Native Hawaiians was crafted. And so my understanding is that I guess it has been completed because we found out upon going to Washington, D.C. this last Wednesday when we scooted down there from the permanent forum here in New York City. We found out that indeed it had cleared the committee this past Monday.
Yep. Kai, we have about a minute and a half left. Of course, what we want to do is tell our viewers, those that oppose the Akaka bill, oppose federal recognition, and we know that many, many do, what they can do to assist Te Kokua in helping defeat this bill.
Well, some of the staffers that we talked to just last Wednesday mentioned, of course, that they're still not getting this kind of information about this overwhelming opposition that exists in Hawaii. They're still not getting that on the Hill. Obviously, they're not getting it from our congressional representatives. But what everybody has to do is communicate with everyone who's in Congress, essentially. And not just Hawaiians. The votes are in the United States, folks. So we have to contact people in the United States to impress upon their individual Congress and representatives, senators and representatives, we do not like what's being done to Native Hawaiians. They don't even have to be Native Hawaiian, but just voice their opinion.
Very good. So be prepared to write your congressmen and senators and tell your family, your ohana and friends on the U.S. mainland to write their representatives and tell them no on S-147, no on the Akaka bill. That's it for right now from the United Nations in New York City. I'm Ehukekahu Cardwell.
And I'm Kaiopua Fife with the Koane Foundation.
This has been Voices of Truth, one-on-one with Hawaii's future. Until next time, ahui ho!